Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
So, as I said, we look at three stories: coffee, tea and spice. We will start with the coffee story. The presentation and documentation and the research has been done by 4 students: Anumeha, Arunab, Nachiket and Simon. They all drink coffee. So, it's kind of their favorite subject. Started with mind mapping, a very detailed mind mapping up to level 3. And you can see that they looked at the history, they looked at the attitudes, they looked at the science, the consumption and the practices and the manufacturing part of it. Okay, so, it was a very detailed mind map. Also, the story of coffee starts with 3 events, okay, very interesting 3 events. Kaldi, the Sufi saints, how they played an important role, and the Kawakane, where actually coffee got promoted. So, let us have a look at it. The story goes that goats ate this berry from a plant, and after eating the berry, they felt very energetic and active, and they almost started dancing. Okay, so the goat herd, the person who was looking after the goats, Kaldi, saw this, okay, and he said, let me also try it. This was in Ethiopia. So, he tried the berries and then found that it had a very stimulating effect, making him feel more alert and energized, and he went and told this to others. Okay, and then people started using these berries, and before long that was coffee, and people came to know about coffee. Okay, the coffee made its way from Ethiopia to Middle East. Okay, and it was the Sufi leader who suggested, let us use this in our ritual practices. Okay, and then it started having more and more people make use of coffee. And of course, what happened interestingly was that there are places where the coffee was served, okay, the Kawakane, okay, and they became the places where debates were held, and over a period of time, the drink was actually made saying that it's fine to drink this drink, and the establishment of these coffee houses became more and more, and especially in Damascus and Istanbul, it became a place to socialize and be entertained. Okay, that's how the starting of the coffee happened, and it spread, as you know, to many parts of the world, and it traveled wide. But in the beginning, okay, when it came from Ethiopia to Yemen, okay, people realized the value of coffee. Okay, so they didn't want everybody to have the knowledge of what is coffee. Okay, so it was illegal to take a plant or a seed out of the Arab Peninsula. Okay, so you couldn't actually take it elsewhere. So then, how did it actually spread? So that's interestingly the story of how people actually, stole coffee from many of these places. Okay, so let's look at some of the stories. Okay. Peter, who was a Dutch merchant, he first, of course, he came to know about the coffee, and he stole the coffee and took these plants to Amsterdam, okay, where he grew in a greenhouse, and he realized that the weather in Europe doesn't really suit coffee. So after some time they went to East Asia, and that's where the coffee got transported into the eastern colonies. Okay, so that was the stealing number one. So in Amsterdam, the mayor needed to do a favor to the French. Okay, so he gifted coffee plants to the king, and there was this young naval officer who was very keen on growing coffee. Okay, but the king said no to it. So what he did in fact was, at night he stole the coffee plant and went all the way from France to the Caribbean islands or the middle of America, and he planted it over there. Okay, and that's how the coffee plantation from Amsterdam went all the way to here. And so that was the stealing number two. This is the story number three. The Portuguese saw the importance of coffee, and they somehow wanted to take the coffee from the French Caribbean islands to Brazil. Okay, and the only way they could do it was become friendly with the governor's wife. So in fact, she actually gave a bouquet of flowers to the Portuguese with the coffee seeds hidden inside it. And that's how the coffee traveled all the way to Brazil. And Brazil is one of the largest producers of coffee now. So we have our own story here from India. This is the story of stealing number 4. So in 17th century, a Sufi saint named Baba Budan, he used to stay in the on the Western Ghats in Karnataka, in the district of Chikmagalur, and he decided to go to Mecca on a pilgrimage. When he went there, he had coffee, and he was captivated by its rich flavor and the stimulating effects, and he decided to steal them. So in fact, he managed to smuggle 7 coffee seeds and came and planted them on the hills in Chikmagalur district, and now it's named after him. It's called as Baba Budan Nagari Hills. Okay, and that's, as you know, is one of the places where we get our coffee from. So that's story number 4. All interesting, right? That's how the coffee spread. And interestingly, the coffee requires the temperate climate. Okay, so you can see that Brazil in South America, Kenya in Africa, India, the south of India, okay, Coorg and Chikmagalur and Ooty, you'll see that coffee is grown. Okay, and you'll see it in Vietnam, Indonesia, Sumatra. Okay, so these are the places where coffee is grown, and it's known as the coffee belt. And this is a visualization, spatial visualization of the coffee. You can see that the type of coffee plantation by region is shown there, and you can see it is all across the temperate zone. Different types of coffee, the Arabica, Robusta, and the mix are also shown there. It's a very nice mapping of, it gives you a picture of where all the coffee is grown. It also gives a picture of where the coffee is consumed on the top there. Okay, and you'll see that interestingly, it's consumed by countries which actually don't make coffee a lot. India also consumes coffee. Okay, so these two mappings are the spatial mappings of how coffee is consumed. So coffee went on to many places. Okay, and if you look at the history of mankind, right, you'll see that coffee has played quite an important role. Okay, so when the slaves went to the West, okay, it was the coffee break which was very, very important for them. Coffee houses became extremely important as places where you actually could get this coffee, and coffee houses also became places where you discussed, you debated, okay, and that was an important aspect of it. It was also the coffee break during the industrialization after a hard day's labor. Yeah, coffee break was something which was quite a prominent thing. Okay, and you can see that coffee had to be made to be instantly made. Okay, so the instant coffee came in, especially to serve the, the soldiers in the World War I. And this is a temporal map of the coffee. Okay, it's a very detailed map. Unfortunately, we can't see everything of it, but you can see that Ethiopia was the first one to do it, okay, on the bottom part of it, and then it went into Yemen. For a very long time, only Yemen was the only place which grew coffee. Then it spread to many other places in the last 300 to 400 years. And then now you can see at the end of it, you can see many countries actually making it, and the last one is coffee grown in Asia. Let's have a look at the detail of this map. This is during the last few centuries, and you can see the last one is actually Asia, and you can see that it came as we said about 2 centuries back, and now it is over there. The dark portion, the fourth one is actually Brazil, which contributes to a lot of coffee. Yeah, so this is how the mapping with respect to time is done, and here we have a very interesting map of the artifacts which are very, very important in making of coffee. So this is a historical journey of vessels and objects that are used to make coffee, right from 1865 to the present times. And you can see that they come in many, many varieties, and you can make coffee in many ways. Okay, and this is something which coffee has given rise to. So in India, for example, we have our own South Indian coffee, which is a filtered coffee, which is brewed over the whole night, and in the morning it's mixed with hot water, milk and sugar, and had it. And you'll see that coffee itself has gone through different waves. Okay, so in the 1800s, coffee became very popular. Okay, and it got to be sold in the market, and you could buy it and go home and make it. Okay, and then came the coffee shops, okay, which became kind of a lifetime. You went to the coffee shops to have a cup of coffee, and now you have another phase where actually you can actually have a certain type of coffee, because there are so many varieties of coffee. You know where it has come from, what it has taken to do it. So the first wave, it didn't matter what coffee it was. The filtered one and the instant one became extremely popular in the West. Okay, and as it says that many people in the US didn't even know that coffee actually comes from a plant. The second wave was where you got the coffee, you spent time here, it was an experience to have coffee. But you didn't know what coffee it was. Okay, you got different varieties of coffee, but not necessarily the place it came from. Okay, and the third wave is all about coffee. It's about how it is grown, okay, and how it is sold, how much it is brewed. Okay, so this is the making of the coffee. In our own context, okay, we had the India Coffee House. These were there in our big cities for the last 150 years. Also, you get gourmet coffee in many places. Okay, so where issues of quality of the coffee, where it comes from, whether it's grown organically, all these issues come into place when you have coffee in these places. So let's look at coffee and sustainability. It's the second most traded commodity after crude oil. Okay, almost 500 billion cups of coffee is consumed every year worldwide. Okay, so it means that it has ecological consequences, right? So you typically drink from a paper cup, it has consequences. Okay, and even though we speak about it, only 2% of these coffee cups are actually reused. Okay, so that's something that has to be concerned about. So there are two ways of growing coffee. One is the sun grown one. It is called as the technical or the industrial method of growing coffee. It's mass produced, it has more yields. That's one way of doing it. The other one is the traditional method where you grow it under shades and it yields very high quality of coffee. Okay, and it's a preferred method right now for growing coffee. So thanks a lot for listening. Isn't it an interesting story of coffee and the way it is presented? And these are the references. So let's move on to the case study of the tea. So this is done by 3 students, Diksha, Nitya and Sohan. So they've gone through what is the tea root, mind mapping it. They did the 3 maps, the time map, the spatial map and the artifact maps. They also looked at points from sustainability, social design, storytelling and the connections to the topic. Okay, and they looked at what are the learnings from doing this exercise. So what is the tea root? So if you look at it, it started in China all the way till Tibet and then it spread from Tibet onwards. Interestingly, tea had political implications, social implications and cultural implications. Okay, and it's an interesting story again of the tea. To start with, they did a mind map, a detailed mind map looking at various aspects of the tea. They also focused on certain aspects of this mind map and they did a spatial map of how the tea traveled from China to other parts of the world. Okay, tea traveled not only by land, by very traditional methods and also by the sea routes. Okay, so it spread to many parts of the world. And you can see that because it spread to so many parts of the world and it's from a very long time period. Okay, so from 2000 BC onwards. Okay, so it has taken many generations and centuries to spread across. They also did a time map of how the tea went from olden times to the new times to the method of drinking it, to customs and traditions connected with the tea itself. And this is a very interesting map of the different artifacts which are used for tea. You can see that tea is stored in certain things. You can see it on the top right corner. The vessels which are used to make tea. Okay, so you can get from ceramic to metal to stone. And since the tea had to be transported across large swaths of land, so you can see the method of transporting the teas. You also needed to store the trees. You also needed to store the teas. Okay, so you have different kinds of vessels to do it. Okay, and also tea gave rise to paintings and art itself. Okay, so that's another section of it. So these are the different artifacts which are connected with the tea. They also looked at it from sustainability, social design and storytelling. Okay, so you had aspects of sustainability, okay, how the tea was made, how it was transported, that's one part of it. Okay, culturally, tea was a social practice. Okay, so there's a way to make it, there's a way to drink it, it's a part of the social gathering, and yeah, that's one part of it. And you also had stories connected with the tea. Okay, so it led to many narratives with respect to the tea. And look at from our own context, right? Tea is made in so many ways in our country. Okay, so if you go to the east, they make it out of leaves. Okay, they brew it for a while and then it is served. Okay, whereas most other parts of the country, they take the tea, they boil it with milk and add spices to it, and again a wonderful drink that you can get on almost any part of the country on the roadside. Yeah, that's how we drink tea. And if you look at it from a sustainability point of view, there are many aspects that you can look at it, in the way it is grown, to the way it is packaged, to the way it is consumed, to attitudes to material and processes, okay, rituals. Yeah, so it has led to a whole ecosystem with respect to making the tea, producing the tea, and then making it into packages, then marketing it and selling it. It has also many connections across the period of time, okay, because it does this very long journey across many lands, and that has given to fashion, to tea culture, to the tradition of how to make the tea. Yeah, in terms of takeaways itself, so the project itself was building narratives, creating characters, looking at history, looking at the issue of tea production, looking at critically examining the different contexts. Okay, so breaking down into subparts and linking it together. The students had some reflections on the work they had done. First of all, design is holistic and you need to take a broader viewpoint of it, and it had many connections. So one of the connections was that the tea had a cultural connection. Okay, so it was very important to look at tea from that point of view. You also had to look at tea from an ecological point of view, okay, in terms of how it is grown, how it is made, and then how it is packaged and how it is marketed and how it is consumed. You also had many stories coming out of the tea across the period of time. Okay, so this was something which was dealt with very critically, and that was a rich takeaway for the students from this project. These are some of the references, and thank you for listening. Let's have a look at the case study of the spice story. Again, a very interesting case study. Done by 3 students, Prashin, Sai Divakar and Siddharth. They started with a mind map, again a very detailed mind map. The mind map had economical, scientific, political, technical and environmental, cultural, social and behavioral aspects. The spice itself across the ages had many implications. Okay, it had trading implications, it had cultural exchange implications, it had geopolitical implications, there was technological innovations as part of it, it had economically impacted many parts of the region. Okay, and it also gave rise to different types of cuisine, for example. So they looked at the spice route, traditional spice route. The blue ones are the spice producing countries and the green ones are the way it is consumed. So you can see that India, China and parts of the eastern parts of Africa are all places where you can actually get spices, and they were transported across all these places, across a period of time, okay, into other countries in the whole Arab Peninsula and Europe was the places that consumed these. Okay, so the spices included pepper, cardamom, cinnamon, ginger. Yeah, so these were the peppers which were very, very essential. And you can see that many cuisines around the world need spices. Okay, so whether it's the curry sauce or the risotto or the samosa or the tagine or the biryani or the nasi goreng, yeah, all of them need spices, right? And it's the spices which make these different cuisines. It's also interesting to map the spice route through time periods, right from 2000 BC to now. And you can see that at many places spices actually played a extremely important role in terms of the history of it. Okay, just to say that, for example, in 2000 BC, there is evidence that earliest use of pepper was from India, and that was very interesting. Okay, for example, in 1000 BC, you can see that Egyptian pharaoh was mummified with peppers. Okay, 70 BC, for example, you can say that trade between Rome and India was thriving during the Roman Empire. Okay, Vasco da Gama came to India for the spices, right? And the Dutch established their trading colony in Kerala in the Malabar coast mainly for the spice trade. Okay, and that is how important spice trade was. Okay, and you will also see that spice is used in many things. For example, spice is a very important ingredient in making many of our textiles. Okay, for the printing, the mix of spices gave the color and the longevity. Spice also gave rise to many forms of containers for storing and transporting it. Spice also had to be carried across the ocean in long distances. So, it gave rise to different shipbuilding techniques because spices had to be carried across these places. The logistics of transportation itself was very interesting. For example, you had caravans arrive, a place where you can go and rest for a while in the long journey. You also needed navigation, you also needed to make use of animals for transportation. Yeah. It also needed that when you trade, you needed translators and interpreters. Okay. You also needed money changers and finances. Okay. And you also needed security systems to, take care of your, the spices. And the spice itself gave rise to how to blend the spices. There was also the question of quality control and making sure the correct mixture is always there. It also gave rise to spice blending and taking care of the quality. It also gave rise to information services. For example, cartographers had to make these maps so that people can navigate across different places. And you had the travelogue writers and news carriers which brought about news about this item. Okay, and the maps played a very important role in all this. So, there were different maps which were being made because that helped people actually navigate between different places. You also had paintings, because of the spice trade which gave rise to different aspects of the spice. Overall, if you look at it, the global impact of the spice road gave rise to cultural exchange. It gave rise to partnership between different places. There were also many peaceful interactions which happened because of the spice trade. It also gave rise to the economic growth of many regions. Okay, and of course, the spice also had an environmental impact. And if you look at it, the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, IMEC, is almost a metaphor for the spice trade that we had from very long time back. These are the references. And again, thanks a lot for listening. So, this was the third story.